Yes. Hi, everybody. Once again, my name is Suha Soydan. I am working at Özyeğin University Center for Entrepreneurship. Today, to celebrate the Global Entrepreneurship Week, we will be hosting a series of events this week as the Center for Entrepreneurship. And as a part of these events, we are having Jason Lau tonight with us. And our goal was to invite guest speakers who are actively working in and contribute to the Turkish entrepreneurship ecosystem. So if you would like to check our events, remaining events, actually we have one remaining event which will be held tomorrow on Özyeğin University campus. Please go to the link that my friends will be sharing via the chat. And we will be having all our events in English. This year we are organizing these events as a part of a wider project called HEIght, Higher Education, Innovation, Growth and Training. And this program is supported by the European Union and European Institute of Innovation and Technology, Climate KIC. In this project, we are working with partner institutions from different countries, and our goal is to help increase the awareness of international students who are studying in Turkey about entrepreneurship and creating chances for them to be more involved in wider entrepreneurship ecosystem. So we would like to thank you once again for joining us, being with us after maybe a tiring day. Today we will have Jason Lau, who is the partner at Strateji, a consultancy firm, and who has different hats, one of which is being an instructor at Özyeğin University as well. So today we hope to hear his experiences as an international stakeholder in the Turkish entrepreneurship ecosystem. And we are looking forward to have your questions so that we will have an interactive session. So, Jason, thank you once again for being with us. As an international stakeholder in the Turkish entrepreneurship ecosystem, who is currently living in Istanbul, can you please tell us about yourself? Who is Jason Lau?
Okay. As many of you know, I am an instructor at Özyeğin University, so I teach Business 101, teach Business 102 in the summers, teach Entrepreneurship 302. Usually, most students will know me just from taking Business 101 because it's a required course for most faculties. But that's really just my part-time job. I'm also a partner in a innovation consulting firm we call Entrepreneurial Innovation. And we work with pretty much all the large companies here in Turkey as part of their entrepreneurial transformation process. Other than that, I am originally, my family is originally from Hong Kong, but I was born in Canada. I grew up in the United States. I've been living here in Turkey for over 17 years now. And I'm married to a wonderful Turkish woman from Sivas. So now I consider myself partially from Sivas. And we have a young daughter, she's 4 years old. And so yeah, we love living here in Turkey.
Lovely, thank you so much, Jason. So you have a really diverse background and you have been to lots of places and lived in lots of places. So before you moved to Turkey, you studied in USA, and if I'm not mistaken, you received a degree from UCLA.
No, I did not go to UCLA. I went to USC, which is the rival school.
Okay.
So we have to set the record straight. I did not go to UCLA.
Okay. So sorry for that. So what was your motive behind for coming to Turkey? How did you decide to come to Turkey?
Great question. That's obviously the first question that usually people ask me is, what are you doing here? Or how did you come to Turkey? Actually, I had no idea about Turkey before I got here. I had a friend at that time who was living in Izmir. She was starting an English language program there. I had just recently graduated. I was working for an asset management firm in Los Angeles. It's a great job, right? I was working as an analyst for basically large stock portfolios, and just but at the end of the day, I felt like here I'm just helping rich people get richer, is there anything else that I can be doing? I'm still young. I want to be able to see the world a little bit. I want to be able to kind of discover who I am. And so this friend kind of emailed a bunch of people saying, hey, would anybody be interested in coming to Turkey? I had no idea actually even where Turkey was, but it sounded very different. It sounded very exotic. Looked it up on a map, and I said, okay, why not? I still don't really know what I want to be doing. Why don't I go spend a year in this country called Turkey, learn the language, meet some people, and then hopefully I can figure out who I am. And I still haven't, I thought I would come for a year or two and then go back to my normal life in the United States. I still haven't gone back to my normal life, but I've in my time here, I've really learned to love this country. So I came in 2004, which is maybe before some of people here were born, or when you were just when you were 2 or 3 years old. At that time, when I first came to Turkey, it was 1 million liras to the dollar. And then at the end of 2004, they dropped 6 zeros and became, one new Turkish liras. So I saw all of those different changes, and yeah, just was able to meet a lot of people, really learn to love the culture and just the environment here. And just felt like there's something I could do here. It was simply a place I wanted to settle down. And
yeah, great. So you came to Turkey actually out of curiosity. You wanted to discover something new, and you were questioning the purpose of life. Maybe what I'm doing with all those rich people.
That's finance.
I
finance.
See. So you started teaching in Turkey, but then at the moment you are giving a consultancy to big corporates about entrepreneurship. So how did your career evolve over the time? What kind of other things did you do before you end up giving this kind of consultancy?
It's a great question. So I spent 2 years in Izmir. At that time I knew I wanted to stay in Turkey, but I didn't really want to teach English. Wasn't really my thing, as you know, Suha, right? And so I decided to go and get my master's degree. I said I'll go do an MBA here in Turkey, and hopefully that will lead me down some different career paths. Applied to a bunch of universities here, Boğaziçi, ODTÜ, Bilkent, and got into all of those universities. But I was really swayed by meeting Erhan Erkut. So he was the dean of the business school at Bilkent at that time, and he flew down to Izmir to really come kind of recruit me to come to Bilkent. And I became his kind of graduate assistant at Bilkent. Really worked closely with Erhan Hoca. I still wasn't really thinking about entrepreneurship. I even remember I took a class on business plans at Bilkent, right? Which is, we don't teach business plans anymore, but I took a class on business plans, and that's the class I did the worst in, because I was like, this, it doesn't make very much sense. But through what I learned at Bilkent, and then especially with my connection with Erhan Hoca, when he came to start Özyeğin University, he said, hey, you got to come with me. And we're starting this entrepreneurial university in Istanbul, and I want you to be, part of that. And I was just inspired by that vision. So, starting a new university, something that was going to be complete, and we would be. I was part of that. I was one of the first, 40-some employees at the university. I started before we had students, and just part of how do we craft a vision for what this university is going to be. When I first started teaching at Özyeğin, I tell my students this, like. My first class was 10 students, right? Today it's 750, right? And just being in that entrepreneurial environment at Özyeğin. So at that time, everybody wore multiple hats. And we did a lot of things, and we, tried a lot of different things. And during that time, I got involved with helping start the entrepreneurship center. From there, then I worked with İhsan at the startup factory, which is Girişim Fabrikası. So we kind of launched Turkey's first tech accelerator back in 2011. So learning how to do that, getting training, and then just trying to run it. So that was, even the work that we did, I think, was very entrepreneurial. We also started Turkey's first social tech accelerator, really focused on social entrepreneurship back in 2012. And then I went over to Koç University and I helped them start their incubation center, which is now known as K-Works. So back in 2013. From there, I stepped away a little bit from the entrepreneurship sector and joined AÇEV, the Mother Child Education Foundation. I was running their fundraising department, but I was still taking the same principles of entrepreneurship, where how do we develop new business models for an established nonprofit? How do we come up with new revenue streams, develop new products and services so they are not solely dependent on donations. That was really my focus at that time, was to develop completely new business models for AÇEV. And then back right at the end of 2015, I was talking again with Isan, who's like, hey, I really want to take what we've done with startups, kind of all of this accelerated programs, all of this training, can we move it into the corporate world? So how do there's a lot of demand now for corporations who want to be more entrepreneurial, who want to be able to develop ideas, develop projects like entrepreneurs. So he said, hey, why don't we go and build this business? So back at the end of 2015, quit my job and we kind of started our own business.
Great. So at this point,
yes.
I would like to jump in.
Yes, please.
Before we move on with corporate entrepreneurship, because I have a specific question about that, I would like I would like you to comment about the state of entrepreneurship ecosystem around 2008-10 in Turkey and in Istanbul, and what were whether there were any challenges for you as an international who is trying to help local entrepreneurs to grow their business. Did you face any challenges by then?
Okay, well, at the beginning, so I really got involved in the Turkish startup ecosystem back, I say 2010, and this is really right at the beginning of when the ecosystem started to come together. We only had a few organizations. There was a few investors. This was kind of as some of the former internet giants. So it's like the Yemek Sepetis, the Gitti Gidiyor's, the Grupanyas, were just getting big. And so there's this interest that was happening with entrepreneurship back in 2010, 2011. So that's, kind of, but in terms of the ecosystem was actually still very small in terms of investors, entrepreneurs, and people who were trying to support that ecosystem. And so we kind of all knew each other. You go to a couple events and you already meet everyone and you already know everyone. So on one hand, that was a huge advantage because there was only a few kind of big events that you go to, and then you can basically, if you were doing anything, people wanted to know you and you can get involved. And since we were running the first tech accelerator at that time, people wanted to get to know what we were doing at Ozine, and they wanted to see how they could get support from Ozine. And so that was just a great time I think, to be involved. A lot of those people are still in the ecosystem, and we can still stay in touch after all those years. But I think on the hard side was that people didn't really know anything about entrepreneurial methodology at that time. I was just learning myself. I read Steve Blank's book. I read Eric Ries's book. We went to do back in with Isan back in 2012. We went to get training from Steve Blank because we're like, how do we actually do this? Because all of that methodology was just emerging back at that time. So the challenge was, how do we, this new stuff that was coming out, how do we adopt it to Turkey? And more importantly, how do I teach it in Turkish? So I had done a lot of teaching in English, but how do I take this and teach it in Turkish? And I think that's where a lot of the challenge was. Can I tell a funny story here?
Please go ahead, please.
So I will tell you about my first day on the job at Girişim Fabrikası, at the startup factory. So I had transitioned to work under Isan. My first day on the job, went into the office, and the secretary said, "Oh, there's somebody here to meet with Isan." But Isan was in a meeting. And so I said, I can take the meeting. I'll at least get the, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I can at least get hear what they have to say and see if there's something we can help them out. So I walk into the room, we sit down. The guy opens up his briefcase and he takes out 2 pairs of underwear. And I'm like, oh, I have no idea what is going to happen. right? I thought we were dealing with technology. I thought open an app or open a computer. He took out 2 pairs of underwear, and he starts to explain to me his idea, which has something to do with how Muslims, when you have to get after your ritual cleansing, there's a certain, you have to, anyway, so there's this whole kind of religious background, this cultural thing, and he's telling you about, how this relates to underwear. And I'm like, I have no idea what he's talking about. My Turkish, I don't think is good enough to actually explain, and I have no idea how to lead him to what he should be doing next. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, this is going to be a challenge. And so I think one of the interesting things about being, like you were asking about being a foreigner, or is that you may miss out on some of those cultural things, or those religious things, or those language things. And those are barriers that we have to overcome. It's like, how do I really come to understand this country? And it may not be, so, we always talk about startups, like, okay, everyone wants to be the next Getir or the next, Trendyol. But there are also other kinds of startups. There are other kinds of business ideas. And if you want to work here, then you have to understand how it relates to Turkey, how it relates to the people and the culture of Turkey.
Love it. So the being more involved in the culture and understanding the language is the barriers, maybe were the barriers for you at the beginning, but then you definitely overcame all of them. So you stated that you work with all sorts of startups, high-tech startups, maybe mobile companies, and even NGOs. And then you stated that you started working for corporate entrepreneurship. So what is corporate entrepreneurship, or in other words, intrapreneurship? And is it possible that companies can act like entrepreneurs?
So this whole idea behind corporate entrepreneurship is to take entrepreneurial methodology. So what I've been talking about, Steve Blank's customer development, lean startup, business models, and be able to apply it in the corporate setting in order to accelerate, I would say, the pace and the impact of innovation. So large companies need to continue to innovate, both internally and externally. But the old methods are not as effective. And they see, something like Getir, who can go and become this, worth much more than even the largest companies in Turkey in a very short amount of time, right? And so they're, well, why can't we do this in a corporate setting? Or what's the block within the corporate setting? How do we innovate like startups? And that's really what I think what we do is we translate those entrepreneurial methodologies into a language that makes sense for corporations, and provide them the infrastructure in order to innovate like startups. Now, your question was, is it possible for companies to act like entrepreneurs? On a very basic level, I would say no, right? But they're not supposed to, because at the end of the day, people who start startups, eventually their goal is to become a corporation. Right? But so corporations don't want to just go back to the days of becoming a startup. That would be, I think, the wrong approach. But they need to be able to take some elements of what startups do well and apply it with using with access to much more resources, with access to lots more customers, be able to take those same principles and apply it within the corporate setting. So there's this, no, I don't think companies should not act completely like entrepreneurs, right? Because then that would destroy the whole thing that they built. But they need to have certain parts of the company that act a little bit more like entrepreneurs, that will take some of those entrepreneurial principles to be able to develop new ideas and develop new business models as things are changing. And so this is really what they call an ambidextrous organization. Ambidextrous means, people who can use both hands at the same time equally well. And what they mean by ambidextrous in the corporate setting is you still want to perform your current job really well, right? Corporations should still, whatever they're making, they're making diapers, they're making cars, like they should still do that really well. They want to execute on their current business model. But at the same time, they need to have their other hand should be exploring new business ideas and new business models. And that's where they need to be able to borrow a little bit from the startup ecosystem.
Lovely. So definitely companies can develop their entrepreneurial skills and capacities and can learn from the startups. So before you took on this job in helping corporates to become more entrepreneurial, you work with mainly with individuals or maybe teams which were more agile or can act in a much faster way. Did you have any challenges in adapting, working with corporates because these are, let's say, giants, and in order to get them working, maybe there might be some internal and external barriers. So how did you transfer your experience to your current role, and how the companies overcome these kind of challenges?
I think it was a learning process for us initially as well. Our starting point was, hey, we've run these programs with startups. How do I apply it into the corporate setting? And initially, I would say it was difficult because, like you said, things don't work quite the same way inside of a large company. It takes a long time to make decisions, right? Things are, and there's all these different people you have to get permission from. You have to talk with the legal department, make sure you're not, breaking any rules, right? Which doesn't really matter, I think, most of the time in the startup atmosphere, because you're just trying to get something going. And so kind of through this, I really spent, I would say, 3 years, we were just constantly iterating on what we were doing, trying to find that right formula that would work within, staying true to those entrepreneurial methodologies, but finding the right, I would say, package or the right concept to make it work in a corporate setting. And then finally, we borrowed all these different things and we developed our own methodology, which we call lean feasibility. So we created our own materials, our own videos, books, and things like that, so specifically for large corporations to apply entrepreneurial methodologies with internal startup teams. So it really takes, because I think if you work in a large corporation, they're more used to having everything kind of laid out for them. So you need checklists, right? Well, startups can they can work a little bit more, let's say, freely, or they're more comfortable in areas of uncertainty. Corporations are not as comfortable with that uncertainty. So we've tried to reduce that uncertainty by breaking it down into specific steps and saying, look, this is what you need to do first. This is your checklist. This is how you do it. And then you're slowly reducing the uncertainty regarding your idea, but in a very structured, systematic manner. That has really helped translate that entrepreneurial methodology into the corporate setting. And it's also given the management a way to evaluate those ideas better. So it's not just based on a great Excel spreadsheet that tells you you're going to make 10 million liras in the next year, but it's really based on hard evidence that you gather from the field.
Okay, lovely. So with this vast experience, what do you think about the formula which makes a corporate entrepreneurship program a success story or a failure, or more successful than the others? What kind of ingredients do we have to run this kind of a program in a big company?
Now you're asking for our, corporate, personal secrets. That's
what
we sell. That's what we sell now.
Yeah. But yeah, maybe just some little insights.
Yeah, okay, I'm just kidding. So I think what are some critical success factors? Is one, you want to be able to provide what's called metered funding, which is you want to start off with not a little bit of funding, and they're not going to have that much time, but you want to be able to validate very quickly. But as the idea gets better, right, as the idea is able to prove or certain elements, then you want to add more time, add more money, right? 2, you want to have like a support team within the company. So usually you have an innovation department that is supporting those kind of new ideas and those new projects and helping them find the right linkages within the company. So who do they need to get support from? Who's the right door to knock on? Same token, usually good companies will have sponsors for those projects, and those are top management. So they'll say, okay, you're going to sponsor this project and you're going to make sure the doors are open to move this idea forward so it doesn't get caught up in the corporate bureaucracy. And obviously the last thing is you got to stick with it. So because entrepreneurship, even with VCs, right, every investment they make doesn't work out. maybe it's about 10%. Right? Same thing when it comes to doing kind of entrepreneurial innovation. You want to be able to have a lot of ideas, a lot of projects that you're working on, and most of them are not going to work out. But if you quit after the first round, you're like, oh, well, nothing came out of this, then you're not going to see the fruit. And Jeff Bezos, at Amazon was always saying, he's like, what makes Amazon a great place to innovate is because we embrace failure, right? We embrace failure, right? We're okay when things don't work out, but we keep trying again. And that's really, I think, what separates those who really do good innovation and those who don't.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you. These are really important points. And at this point, I would like to ask, in the innovation teams, in these corporate settings, you work with different people from different departments, and you cross path with people from different backgrounds. So at the moment, we have a really big group with us, around 300 people, and most probably majority of our attendees maybe turn out to be professionals in companies working as white-collar workers. What can you suggest to our participants who are going to work in big corporations, and how can they contribute to their companies to be more entrepreneurial, or maybe if they are going to have any entrepreneurship ideas which can profoundly affect the company, how should they get this idea to an execution stage? For future professionals or current professionals, your experiences and insights will be very instrumental.
Good question. So I think before, people used to see kind of entrepreneurship, startup versus corporation as kind of black and white. So you choose a career path. But with this kind of advent of corporate entrepreneurship, it's kind of really blended these two worlds, where somebody you can work in the corporate world, but still apply kind of entrepreneurial principles. You still have an entrepreneurial mindset to your work. And more importantly, I've seen now, especially within these large corporations and the ones that we work with, they're looking for young employees who have an entrepreneurial mindset, because they realize like the old way of working doesn't work anymore. They need to have people who are going to be working on constant improvements, who are going to come up with new ideas to push the business forward. And so this whole idea, it's not these two distinct worlds anymore. So for, maybe most of the people here are not going to become entrepreneurs. It's not in your blood, and it's okay, right? But you can still take those entrepreneurial principles and apply it in the corporate setting. And specifically, corporations are looking for people who have that mindset, who have those entrepreneurial skills. And you can do it within the more comfort of, and with the resources of a corporation. So that's what I would say is like, I think what's one thing that's great about Özyeğin is that we try to teach entrepreneurship to every student. And because it's really a skill set, it's a soft skill set that you need wherever you go to work, right? The business models of today will not be the business models in 10 years, maybe not even 5 years, right? And so your whole career is not going to be spent doing one job, right? I can't even imagine what our world is going to look like 20 years from now. Just, when you're getting into the middle of your careers, I don't even know what the world is going to look like. And we don't even know what companies are going to be sitting at the top at that time, right? So you need to be thinking about, as people entering the workforce, how do I contribute to help move my company to the next product life cycle, to the next business model, right? And that's where you're going to add value. So that's why, I think it's completely relevant whether you're going to start a startup or you're working in a large company.
And I guess being more entrepreneurial or having an entrepreneurial mindset in a corporate setting can provide good career progress opportunities. In a traditional setting, maybe you have to achieve some certain KPIs to move to the next step, but with an entrepreneurial attitude, maybe you can immediately go higher up in the ranks or get a much more comfortable position within a much shorter time period. So it is also good for, I guess, the professional career development.
I think, yeah, that's also changing within the corporate mindset, where in the past it was really based on, what degrees you got, right? What certificates you got. Oh, you did a master's, and then you kind of slowly work your way up the corporate ladder. But now more and more they're looking at what have you done, right? Because work is less standard and it's more project-based. Right? And project-based, whether it's, it doesn't necessarily have to be an entrepreneurial project in itself. It doesn't have to be, I'm trying to work on an innovation project or a spin-off, but even the standard kind of corporate projects need to apply entrepreneurial principles. Right? How do I understand customer needs? Right? How do I test to make sure, my assumptions are correct? How do I quickly prototype solutions to make sure I'm on the right path? Right? This is, corporate projects now require that type of approach. And if you can do that well, that's a way for you to kind of skip levels, because they're looking for people that can do that. And that's what's going to make the company successful, not just because you're good at checking all the boxes and moving paper around.
Lovely, thank you. And at this point, we have a question from the chat box, so let me read it. For a freshly graduate student, should we directly start working in a corporate, or should we initiate our own startup from the get-go? What do you think?
My suggestion is, unless you have all the right pieces in place, so if you're like, you already have a great idea, it's a great problem, you already have a team that's in place, and you can build that solution, I would say don't start a startup right away. Right? Sometimes you can have that optimal mix, but if you don't, I would say learn on somebody else's dime. Because one of the things that's missing most of the time from young entrepreneurs is they don't understand the sector. They don't understand how those sectors work. They don't have networks, so they can't, they don't know who to contact. And so it's better to make mistakes inside the company while they're paying your salary. You're going to be so you don't have to spend your own money to learn. You can learn while somebody is paying you, right? But always keep your eye out for opportunities while you're working there. So I think if you really want to say, okay, I want to do a startup someday, I want to have my own business, well, go and work for a corporation, understand the Turkish work environment. So how are employees treated, what's the culture, learn as much as you can about how that business works, how that sector works, build a network there, and always be looking for opportunities, because corporations miss those things, right? But if you're looking out for them, you will see where there's opportunities to do a startup, and maybe you can find people within the company that will join you, and you can go and you have the network, the people there, you understand the problem intimately, and you can go ahead and, hey, I'll quit now and I'll start my startup. But learn on somebody else while somebody's paying you.
Yeah, lovely, great point. Thank you so much. So actually, we are always talking about people. People are really important in a startup, whether it's going to be a success story or not. So as future entrepreneurs, can you give us some insights about a great founding team? Or let's say a co-founder, because most of the time an individual will be lacking all the necessary skill set to get a startup going. For that reason, people should be working with co-founders, and we should be working with diverse skill set. So since you have worked with individuals, startups, and big corporates, what do you think about a great founding team? What kind of qualities should there be in order to make it a success or failure?
There's a lot of kind of literature out on this already. So one of the common refrains that are used is the hacker, hustler, hipster kind of approach. Another term I've seen recently, they call it the rainmaker, the expert, and something else. And so yeah, you want to. So I think at the end of the day, what you want to look at is complementary skills, right? So first, you want to understand what is the problem that we are trying to solve. Do we have an interesting solution? Do we have a strong competitive advantage, or what they call an unfair advantage, to be able to deliver on that solution? Yes, the conductor. Thank you very much, Said. And then do I have a team that can execute on that? right? And so most of the time, and that's why they say generally solopreneurs have a lower success rate, because usually it's very rare to have everything that you need in one single person, right? And so you want to look at, okay, what are the skills that are required to execute on this solution, to make it actually, to be able to deliver an advantage on that solution? How much of it do I have? And what are the things where I need to get from somebody else? So I often talk about, so our company with Core Strategy, partners with Isan, and Isan is really great at some things, right? So he's an amazing salesman. He's a great networker. He's very kind of visionary. But I am really good at, I'm learning the new methodologies, creating the frameworks, applying it, and we've learned from each other, but we have very complementary sets of skills. So he likes being in the front. He's the Steve Jobs of the company. And he likes being on stage, getting to know. I like to be the Steve Wozniacki, right? I like to be in the background, guy who's tinkering, trying to come up with better solutions. And I don't care if I'm in the front or not. I don't care if I have to be on stage or not, right? And you need to find that balance of egos, balance of skills, and it can be 2, 3 people, 3 people, 4 people, but there has to be a recognition of this is, what I bring. And this is what that person brings, and we need each other, right? Because if it's all about me, then it's not going to be successful. But I think that's one of the things that's also important is, why you should go work in other companies, because you're also discovering yourself, right? What are the things that I'm good at? What are the things I really enjoy? What are the things I'm not so good at, right? And that's okay as well. And then how do I build a team that complements who I am?
Lovely, thank you. So having diverse and complementary skill set is a really important point for future entrepreneurs. And actually, this is also important for teams who are going to be working on projects in specific companies and also in during their courses as well. So if they have complementary skill set, then definitely their endeavors will be much more positive and much more successful. So you are coming from an international background. You have a diverse experience in different parts of the world. Did you, in a way, leverage this being an international figure in Turkish ecosystem as a positive thing? And did it help you to have connections in USA or in other parts of the world?
I think, well, making it as a foreigner here in the startup ecosystem, I think there's this, it goes back to really understanding yourself, and then building, what do I bring to the table, right? What is my niche? What are my, how do I make myself kind of invaluable, so where, I don't have to compete directly with, everybody else, right? So part of that could be international connections. So obviously for me to deal with international clients is much easier, for me to bring in linkages from the US. But I wasn't involved with the US startup ecosystem before I came here. So it's not like I had this great network in the US and I came and I brought it to Turkey. But I think there's a certain advantage to being a little bit different, right? And so where I always, I think it's really important as a foreigner, if you want to make it here in Turkey, you have to really love Turkey, right? You have to deep dive into Turkey. I mean, and I'm talking about language, I'm talking about, culture, I'm talking about appreciation for food, right? And then you got to find, what the things that you enjoy, but you really got to love Turkey, because Turkish people love that, right? Turkish people love when you love their country. And it bridges a different level of trust. But at the same time, you want to disavow your foreign side, right? Because I love Turkey. I love being here, right? My Turkish is great. When I was doing my grad school at Bilkent, I joined the Turkish Folklore Club. I was on the folklore team, right? Because I love Turkish dance. And I can talk about all types of Turkish cuisine from all over the country. But at the same time, I bring a different perspective to the work. So I understand how things work in China or in the US, and I can add a different element that maybe somebody who grew up in Turkey can't. And so it's one side of, if you really want to make it here, you got to love here. You got to love the people, love the culture, right? But at the same time, you have to recognize that you're different and use that as an advantage. So yes, when I go into anytime I go into a meeting for the first time, everyone is always like, oh, do we have to speak in English? And I'm like, no, because I'm from Sivas, right? We don't need to speak in English. It's kind of breaking the ice with people, right? Saying, I love Turkey, right? And all of a sudden now people are opening up to you and you can start talking about other things. So you're always going to have to be kind of proving yourself, proving who you are, why you're here. But at the same time, I think if you are very honest with who you are and what you bring, it creates all of these opportunities. Because you have a completely different perspective as a foreigner, you can bring in a completely different set of skills that is invaluable. Like we're talking about, complementary, diverse team. Well, just by being a foreigner, you're adding diversity. And that's really important, especially in the area of entrepreneurship and innovation, because you need those different ideas, you need those different perspectives.
Lovely. Really great points, and thank you for sharing all those. So at this point, I would like to ask once again about diversity. You had a real diverse career. You started in finance, and then you turned out to be a teacher teaching English, and then did your MBA and took part in the foundation stage of university. And now you are then later on you work with entrepreneurs, high growth entrepreneurs, and now with corporates. So at this point, for future professionals or for future entrepreneurs, what can you suggest for our participants to get prepared for a new opportunity? It is evident that you are always prepared, or you were actively seeking those opportunities, and then when you had the chance, you were able to seize them. So how can people, or how can future professionals be prepared for new opportunities?
For all the jobs I've had at Turkey, I actually never applied to any of them. And the ones I applied to, I didn't get.
Great point.
And the ones that I did work in was ones I never applied to. And I think it's because as a foreigner trying to make it here, it's hard to separate yourself on a CV, right? And so for a large corporation, or even anybody, they're looking at a CV and they're not going to want to hire you because you're a foreigner, and there's all this trouble about going through and hiring a foreigner. And so it's really based on, I really focused on network and proving myself in every step of in everything that I do, right? So like I said, you have to make yourself invaluable. Meaning, why would somebody go through the process or the hassle of working with me when there's like all these other Turkish people they can work with? Because I bring something different, and you can't express that on a CV, but you have to prove it to them. You're always going to be proving yourself. You're always going to have to, hey, but I bring something different. And once you do that, people are going to talk about you because they remember you, right? Well, remember, hey, there's that crazy, Chinese American guy who's here in the startup ecosystem, is doing something interesting. He brings something different, and we want him to come and do something with us. And so there's an advantage and a disadvantage. Initially, on paper, it's a disadvantage, right? But I think when people get to know you, and you kind of stand behind your word, you can prove yourself, then it becomes an advantage, because now you're sticking out in a positive way, and people remember you, right? And so if you get remembered for the right things, that will open up all of these doors. So you're saying, how do you seize opportunities? Well, it's because you do the work really well, whatever you're given. And you are not afraid to try something new. You're not afraid to you're not going to say no. You're going to put yourself out there, and you deliver every time. And people will remember that, and they're going to call you the next time something rolls around, because they remember you. So you got to change it from a disadvantage into an advantage.
Lovely. Thank you so much. So you said that, let's say we are talking about maybe Turkish context, but it can be applicable to other parts of the world. So as an international operating in a different setting, different cultural or business setting, there are certainly some disadvantages, maybe cultural or legal or whatsoever. So how did you cope with all of these? How did you keep yourself pumped up, motivated, and how did you resolve all these barriers and psychology and related issues?
I think you just have to be, especially in a country like Turkey. I don't know, maybe in a country like Europe or the US might be different, but I think one of the invaluable lessons I learned from being in Turkey is you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to kind of go with the flow when things don't necessarily work out the way you thought they would. You can't have everything all planned out because things change very rapidly. But you got to stick to your values. And you say, this is what I want. These are my dreams. This is who I am. And I know I can bring value wherever whatever job I'm in, whatever team I'm a part of. And you just gotta, I think it's a little bit process of understanding yourself, understanding what's important, and then being able to just stick with that. And then, so how do you kind of stay motivated? Or yes, there's a lot of kind of legal issues with working in Turkey. There's all kinds of you just get random things that happen, and part of that is just being flexible, knowing that rules are not always rules, but sometimes you can kind of work around rules. There's always, different ways of different approaches. Sometimes things may not work out exactly how you thought they were going to be, but something else appears. So I think just really, but always kind of staying true to like, hey, this is who I am as a person. These are the values that I have. I'm going to be, and I deliver value whatever job I'm in, right? And it's so where I'm at today is because I've done all these kind of random. You can think if you look at my CV. It's like, you guys has done all these kind of random things, right? But I've learned so much from each of those experiences, and they help me to do what I do today. Because I think initially, especially someone who's starting off in their career, it's not about how much money you make. It's not about your title, right? It's about how much responsibility you can get and how much you can learn while doing it. You make leaps by how much different kinds of work that you're doing and how much you're learning. And so that's what, I really spent the first 10 years, like, I think the additional challenge of doing this in another country with a different culture and a different language. I still remember when I was doing my first internship at Garanti Bank while I was at Beacon, at the end of every day, because the whole day was in Turkish. I get home and I would have headaches every day because I was like, oh my, I can't take any more Turkish, right? But it's because, it's like, how do I learn as much as how do I put myself out there as much as I can? And then the whole thing behind innovation and ideation, you take all those experiences, then you start to merge those ideas into, hey, this is insights. And you're saying, now I can see opportunities. Now I can see how these things work together to be able to create new value. And that's where you'll really start finding your niche, I think, here in the workplace.
Thank you. Love the points. Thank you so much. So we talked about being an international in a foreign setting, and we talked about entrepreneurship. We talked about entrepreneurship, working with companies and developing their entrepreneurial skills. From this point onwards, I will be sharing you with the questions that we received from the chat. And once we are done with the questions, then we will call it a day for all of us. So one of the questions is about working with corporates. And let me read you the question. How do you start brainstorming entrepreneurial ideas for corporations? What do you need to know about the corporation and their vision?
Now you're asking more corporate secrets. Okay, I mean, I'm actually going to be teaching. I'm doing a workshop, 2-day workshop on ideation for a large company tomorrow and Friday. This is specifically for how do corporations come up with new ideas, and there's a lot of different techniques. But one, I think you want to understand the company's business model. Who do they work with? How do they operate? What are the assets that they have? What are the things that they're good at? Then you want to understand where they're headed. So a lot of times the companies we work for, we help them design what's called an innovation strategy, which is, well, where does the company need to be in the next 3 to 5 years? How do they need to position themselves? And where do they need to align, be able to spend their resources to get there? So you want to understand where they're headed. You want to understand where they are today. Then you want to understand what's going on in the world around them, right? So what is the different trends that are happening? How is their sector changing? What are startups doing in their area? And then you want to then it's all about blending those things to say, where are the opportunities? Right? So it's not really about the great idea, because the idea will develop over time. But where are the opportunities? Where are there gaps in the market where I can use some of those corporate strengths, right? Whether that's going to be certain assets that they have, certain skills that they have, certain networks that they have, and be able to attack those specific market gaps. Right? So what you're looking for is actually gaps, right? And not specifically looking for the best idea. And as you understand those gaps, as you dive into those gaps, and you get to know the customers, you understand the problem deeper, then you'll start coming up with good solutions.
Lovely. Corporate secret now we have.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the second one. So we have another question about the number of deals and the increase in the amount of deals. So what do you think about the current state of Turkish entrepreneurship ecosystem? We are hearing more and more investment stories and success stories. So can we say that, okay, we have a mature ecosystem at the moment, or still we have progressed, but we are not there yet? What do you think?
I mean, I think the Turkish ecosystem has come a long way, looking back in the last 10, 11 years. So now we have, a number of enormous success stories, the unicorns, the decacorns, which has really put, I think, Turkey on the map, especially when it comes to the European kind of startup ecosystem. A lot of investors are now looking at Turkey for some good and bad reasons. So, in terms of, yes, there's a lot of talent here, and two, it's also the talent is a lot cheaper than it is in Europe. But also that there are a lot of good ideas, and that are emerging, a lot of startups that are emerging because people don't see that pathway in the corporate setting anymore. So I think has Turkey arrived in a sense? No, but obviously there's still ways to go, right? There's still things that need to, there's still this process of maturation. We're not Silicon Valley. We're never going to be Silicon Valley, right? But there's ways in which I think Turkey can carve a niche in the global startup ecosystem, and it's already started doing that, with these big names like Getir and Yemekspeti and Trendyol and Peak Games, et cetera, right? That has really put Turkey on the map, and now it's really creating opportunities for this new generation. What I think the main challenge is going forward is how do you continue to create new opportunities for new startups? Because yes, there's a lot of money going into the Turkish startup ecosystem, but it's going more to mature scale-ups than to new startups, right? And what these mature scale-ups are doing is basically eating up all of the potential opportunities in the market. And so one of the challenges, I think, because you go out and you look at what Getir and Trendyol are doing today, is they are gobbling up all of the IT talent in the work, in all of the country, right? And so if you are trying to build something else and you can't pay that much, you're going to have trouble finding, right? And so that's one of the challenges when you have these enormous giants that emerge. And you see the same thing happen in the US, when you have the Facebooks and the Amazons and the Googles of the world basically go out and they buy up or they copy anything that's kind of promising. And it starts to squeeze out the area for new startups to emerge. And that's one of the dangers that I think I would say I see here in the Turkish ecosystem now. We're just at the beginning, but these big giants like Trendyol is now kind of dominating that, the e-commerce space, and they're going to start pushing. They're moving into that super app category, and they're now starting to push out the opportunities for maybe new startups can emerge.
Thank you. Very comprehensive take on the Turkish ecosystem. Thank you for all these comments. And we have a social question. So, which book about business you can recommend to our participants? And maybe you can talk about your bedside book.
No. There's a lot of books that I could recommend, but if I'm just going to name one, I think specifically for people who are just starting out in their careers, I would recommend. It's actually a really hard book to read. I'm sorry, but it really changed the trajectory of my life. It's this book called Mastery by Robert Greene. And I read this back in my 20s, and it really completely changed my perspective on work and how I need to be thinking about work. And what mastery is how do you actually become a master at something? Right? And I see this problem, especially with young people today. It's like, hey, I did my university degree. I've been working at this company for a year. I've already mastered it. No, you haven't. Right? He talks about mastery as a process of 10 years. Right? And you go through this apprenticeship process. How do I put myself in a position to learn? And I really tried to kind of do that in my own career, and where today I feel like I actually am a master of my craft, and I can start actually bringing up new apprentices kind of within the work that I do. But it takes time, and it takes effort, and it takes focus. So if you're looking for a good book to read, and you have the time, and I would Mastery by Robert Greene. Not enough people know it, and I think it's a great book. What have I just read recently? So one of the things that I'm challenged with now is really thinking about corporate culture. So as our team has grown, when I was starting off with Isan and I, just 2 people, now we're a team of like 10. And I'm really thinking about culture and how do we build culture, and how do I, especially working in an online environment, how does culture permeate our company and guide the direction of our employees? So I just read a book called Culture Wins, and it talks about how Peter Drucker has a saying that says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Meaning, no matter how great of a plan you come up with, no matter how great of a strategy that you set out, if your culture is not aligned with that strategy, if your culture doesn't support that strategy, it won't work. It will fail every time. And so that book really kind of, how do you go about to build a culture? It doesn't matter if your company's 10,000 people or 10 people, there's still a culture there, and it could be a good culture or it could be a bad culture. As a manager, well, how do I work on actually cultivating a good culture that will guide my employees? So that's what I'm reading. And I'm also rereading Dune, just because I read it when I was young. I went to watch the movie last weekend, loved it. And so I'm rereading Dune just because I love science fiction. That's just, for fun on the side.
So mastery is really important. You need to be the master of your craft. This is a really important point. And culture, really important as well. So if you are creating a culture, you should really, if you are creating a startup, you should really think about it, and you should really work on it to create a sustainable culture, a positive culture. Otherwise, culture definitely will be the end of your startup. Lovely points. And actually, we have another question about the financial side. So, which assets should we invest in 2020? So
I don't give investment advice.
Okay,
I tell this to my students as well. I don't tell you what coins to buy. That's not
okay. So we are skipping this one. We already had enough corporate secrets, so we will be move on with this one. So was there a milestone for you that you achieved, and you believe that, okay, I achieved my milestone, and now I will be moving on to a new stage or a new path? Did you have a moment like that?
So I think right now I really enjoy what I do. I love the work that we're doing. We're still I think we're still growing as a business, as a team. We're still looking to hire. So anybody out there who wants to work in entrepreneurial innovation, please get in touch. Always looking for new talent. We're still in a growth phase. We still have set out a 3 to 5 year plan for ourselves. Just recently, where do we want to get to? But personally, I think in the long term, as much as I like the work that I do and doing, that's really not my long-term dream, right? Like I said, I love Turkey, but I actually don't love Istanbul that much. Right? I love like the more kind of more authentic culture of Turkey. I spent a lot of time in the East and the Southeast doing some different projects, doing social responsibility projects. I've really been fascinated by the history and the culture in kind of more the Eastern parts of Turkey. My long-term dream is I want to move out to the Southeast. I want to be able to work with young entrepreneurs, work with students, work with businesses in places that don't have as much access to resources and insights that I think there's a lot. In terms of the startup ecosystem in Istanbul, it's quite mature, right? You have investors, you have programs, you have training, you can get a network. Everything is kind of in place here. When you go to some of the smaller cities, unfortunately, I've gone and traveled to different places, done some different trainings and talks, and those same opportunities are not available in other parts of Turkey. And my long-term dream is, how can I be part of that? I want to be part of, how do I help the people with young people with dreams to be able to help make their dreams a reality? And so I want to be able to bring my experiences, my skill set into places that don't have as much access to resources.
Lovely, thank you so much. So we have one final question, I guess. If you were a business student right now, in which subject would you do your minor and why?
In which subject would I do my minor? Wow, that's a good question. So, well, I can start off with one of the things before I got to university, and the system is a little bit different in the US, but I was either thinking about doing business or doing computer science, right? So I applied to programs, both, and I got into computer science at UCLA, but I decided to go to study business at USC.
I knew, yeah.
But I wish I had gone to study computer science at UCLA. So I would say that was a mistake I made 20 some years ago. Today, obviously, I think computer science is not as important as it was 20 years ago. Right? But I think what you want to be able to understand is what do you need going forward? You want to understand artificial intelligence, right? You want to understand this whole kind of concepts behind neuromarketing. And you want to be able to understand concepts like how you want organizational behavior, being able to manage people. So you want to think of skills that, because I think over the next 10 years or so, we'll see artificial intelligence take over more of these manual tasks. And that even includes things like programming to a certain extent, right? But where artificial intelligence is going to be more difficult is understanding people. And so I would love to do a minor in something like psychology. I would love to do a minor in something like, sociology, or, like I said, organizational behavior, because managing people is a lot more complex. Understanding people, their decisions, their habits is a lot more complex than maybe coding a website. And I think we have moved so much into hard skills that we have lost a little bit of that focus on soft skills. And so you want to find that balance between hard skills and soft skills, where you want to be able to understand code. You want to be able to maybe write some code. You don't have to be the best coder in the world, but you want to be able to understand people and how to manage people, and be able to build empathy with people, because that's where the creativity side really comes into play.
So no matter what subject major they study, all of us actually needs to be more involved with technology, have a better understanding of, and they may develop better skills to effectively use it. And definitely we should be knowing more and more about psychology, people psychology, so that we can work more effectively with people, work better in teams, and maybe lead our endeavors in a much better way. So Jason, thank you ever so much for taking your time. I know that you had a busy day, and you are going to have busy days tomorrow and the next day as well. But it meant a lot for us, and we tried to show the experience of an international stakeholder with your participation. And I believe we did great. All the points you raised are really, really important and really insightful. So thank you for taking your time. And before we end this session, could you please share your final remarks with us?
Well, for all the students out there, I would love to be in your. I think where you are today is both a huge advantage and also a huge challenge, right? Where one, like I said, the challenge side is you can't really see what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. Right? People are talking about metaverses and it's like, okay, how is the world going to be changing? And you will not be working in the same job, in the same career, or for the rest of your life, even in the next 10 years, right? So you have to be able to build yourself to be adaptable to those changing circumstances. But I think the advantage is where you're really seeing the world in this, it's right at the point where things are changing, right? And where the old ways of doing things or the old ways of thinking about or approaching problems are not working anymore. And companies are specifically looking for people like you who can bring new perspectives, who can bring new energy, bring new creativity to the workplace. And that's a huge opportunity for you, right? So I think if you can combine the right skills, you have a chance to, whether you start a startup or you work in a corporation, it doesn't matter, right? You have a chance to do a lot of really great things and be able to advance very quickly, I think, in the corporate world.
Thank you, great point. So thank you, dear participants, for your participation and being with us today. With your participation, we were able to celebrate Global Entrepreneurship Week with a much better way, and we are going to end our activities for Global Entrepreneurship Week 2021 with our final event, which is going to be held on Özyeğin University campus on ÖZEX. So if you have not registered for this event, please register via the link that our colleagues provided from the chat box. This is going to be a physical event, so there will be definitely some limitations in terms of the space due to the pandemic and related issues. So if you would like to attend, please register and be on the premises a bit earlier. Thank you, Jason, for taking your time once again, and we are looking forward to working with you in our future projects. And we are wishing you all the best with your endeavors in corporate entrepreneurship, and hopefully for your, let's say, projects in Southeast and other parts of the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
See you.
Have a
Take
great
care.
night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.